Cyber failure may begin with a perfect design, solving the wrong business risk. Tomorrow, the strongest cybersecurity architecture will influence strategy before selecting a single control. Joining us is Lavanya Kanagaraj, CISP and an IIM expert, educator, cybersecurity speaker, and a creator on cybersecurity and artificial intelligence. Easier for professional to understand and how to apply. The 2026 version DBIR report says 31% breaches now begin with software vulnerabilities, evidence that architecture decisions have become business resilience decisions. Let's dive into the topic. Before diving into the topic, let's have a small video about Power of Knowing Forum. Joining us is Lavanya Kanagaraj. As I said, I am an expert. Let's welcome everyone to the Preeminent Conclave and dive into the topic. Hi Lavanya, welcome
Hello,
to our
Ray.
podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. Good evening. How about
Good
you?
evening. Good evening, Lavanya. A small intro about yourself, Lavanya. I'm good. Sorry, I'm good. A small intro about yourself, Lavanya.
Yeah, sure. Actually, thank you for the warm introduction. It's a pleasure to be here on Preeminent Conclave. And hello, everyone. I'm Lavanya Kanagraj, CISSP certified cybersecurity professional with over 10 plus years of experience in identity and access management, cybersecurity, and digital identity. I currently working as an assistant manager in one of the big four, where I help organizations strengthen identity security and build secure and resilient access strategies. Alongside my professional role, I'm passionate about making cybersecurity and artificial intelligence easier to understand through my workshops, speaking engagements, and LinkedIn content and knowledge sharing initiatives. I enjoy helping students, professionals, and professors and organizations bridge the gap between technology and practical application. And I strongly believe that cybersecurity is no longer just about implementing technical controls. It's about enabling business and building digital trust and helping organizations innovate securely. And I'm excited to be part of today's discussion because of the role of a cybersecurity architect is evolving rapidly. Today, architects are expected not only to design secure systems, but also to understand business strategy, manage risk, and support AI adoption and guide executive decision making. I'm looking forward to sharing my experiences, perspectives, and practical insights with everyone joining us today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lavanya. A great introduction. I think Big Four is what you are working for, and there's a lot of work that you've been doing, is what I understand. Now, let's start with where must cybersecurity architects' mindset change first?
Mhm. Okay, that's a great question, and I think this is one of the biggest shift happening in cybersecurity today. If you had asked this question 10 years ago, a cybersecurity architect was primarily expected to design secure networks, choose the right security tools, and ensure that technical controls met compliance requirements. But success was often measured by how technically sound the architecture was. Today, that expectation has completely changed. A cybersecurity architect is no longer designing systems in isolation. Instead, every architectural decision has a direct impact on the business, whether it's customer trust, operational resilience, compliance, or digital transformation, or even how quickly a new product reaches the market. From my perspective, engineering excellence is still essential, but it is no longer enough. A technically perfect solution can still fail if it is too complex to operate, too expensive to maintain, or slow down the business, or doesn't address the organization's most important risk. Security should enable the business, not become a barrier to it. As someone who has spent more than a decade working in IAM, which is Identity and Access Management, I have seen that the biggest challenges are rarely caused by technology alone. More often, they arise from people, processes, governance, and business priorities. You can implement the best IAM platform available, but if roles are poorly designed, access ownership is unclear, or business teams don't adapt the processes, the organization remains exposed. That's why I believe today's cybersecurity architect must start with different questions. Instead of asking, which technology should I implement? We should first ask, what business outcomes are we trying to protect? And what is the most significant risk to that outcome? And how much risk is the organization willing to accept? Which security approach best supports the business while reducing the risk? Only then should we decide on the technologies and controls. Another major change is the rise of cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and SaaS platforms and interconnected digital ecosystems. So, organizations are moving faster than ever, and architects must design for continuous change rather than static environments. So, I'm thinking security decisions must support innovation while maintaining a resilience. And ultimately, I believe the next generation of cybersecurity architects will be recognized not just for their technical expertise only, but for their ability to connect with technology with business strategy. They must be able to communicate with engineers, business leaders, executives, and boards, translating technical risk into business decisions. So, because at the end of the day, our job isn't just to build secure systems, it's to help organizations achieve their goals securely, confidently, and with resilience. Yes, that's all, Prem.
Yeah, great pointers. I think there's a lot of things that you are saying in terms of what has changed in the engineering excellence alone, and insufficient things for the next generation of cybersecurity architectures. Right? That's what
Yes,
we are talking about.
yes.
Where does a technical strong architecture fail when it is not connected to business priorities, customer trust, or organization risk appetite level?
So you're asking where it is failing,
Yeah,
business priorities, customer trust, and organizational
risk
risk
assessment.
appetite. Okay, okay, okay. So I believe a technically strong architecture begins to fail the moment it loses the sight of why the business itself exists. As a cybersecurity professionals, it's easy to focus on designing the most secure solution. It's easy to focus on designing most secure solution. But if that solution makes it difficult for customers to use a service or delays product launches or increases operational complexity or exceeds the organization budget sometimes, then we have solved a technical problem while creating a business problem. For example, um, imagine implementing extremely restrictive access controls across every business application. From a security perspective, it may look like an excellent design. It will look like an excellent design. But if employees cannot access the resources they need, Customer support is sometimes delayed. Developers are unable to release critical updates on time. The organization loses productivity, it loses customer confidence, and it loses competitive advantage also. So another important aspect you were saying is risk appetite. So every organization has a different level of risk it is willing to accept based on its own industry experience, regulatory obligations, and business goals. The architect's role is not to eliminate every possible risk, that isn't practical actually. To eliminate every possible risk isn't not practical at all. Our responsibility is to help leadership understand the risk first, evaluate the trade-offs, and make informed decisions. I have always believed that cybersecurity should be a business enabler, not business obstacle at all, first of all. So, a successful architecture is one of that protects what matters most while allowing the organizations to innovate, to grow, to serve its customers with confidence. That's why I always encourage architects to think beyond technical excellence and ask, how does this decision help the business achieve its objectives securely? When architecture aligns with business priorities and customer trust and goals of the organization, security becomes a strategic advantage rather than just a technical function. S prime.
Very important pointers, because we need to look at having business looking at what is matters in for them, how it is resilient, and what is that the architects look at. Now, coming to that point only, why must architects understand revenue models, operating dependencies, regulatory exposure, and executive decision making before selecting technologies or controls? Lalit?
Okay. Okay, so we're asking about revenue models, regulatory exposure, and decision making.
Right.
Okay. So I'm thinking this is where I believe cybersecurity architect transition from being technology experts to becoming trusted business advisors. Every organization has different priorities. It depends based on the organization. For a bank, protecting financial transaction is critical. Okay. So for a hospital, it's patient care and also availability of clinical systems. For an e-commerce company, even a few minutes of downtime during a major sale can result in significant financial or reputational impact. If we don't understand how the organization generates its revenue, which business processes are critical, or what regulations it must comply with, we risk recommending security solutions that don't address the organization's most important challenges. For example, implementing an expensive security control on a low risk system may not provide much value, while a critical customer facing application might still remain vulnerable. So, good architecture is about prioritizing what matters most. So I'm repeating, good architecture is about prioritizing what matters most. So architects also need to understand operating dependencies. Modern organizations rely on cloud platform, third-party vendors, sometimes APIs, SaaS applications, and nowadays it's obviously AI services. A disruption is one of these dependencies can affect multiple business functions. Understanding those relationships help us design more resilient and practical architectures. And regulatory exposure is another important consideration, whether it is data privacy or industry regulations, or maybe it is compliance requirements. Architecture decisions should support the organization's legal and governance obligations, not create additional risk. So, finally, what I'm thinking is executive decision making is about balancing competing priorities. Business leaders aren't only thinking about security, they are also considering cost, customer experience, customer trust, innovation, operational efficiency, and also growth. As architect, our role is to present options, explain the risk and trade-offs in business terms, and help leaders make informed decisions, not simply recommend the most technically secure solution. To me, that's what strategic architecture is all about. And it's not just about just selecting the right technology. It's ensuring every security decision supports the organization's mission and protects its critical assets and enable sustainable business growth. That's what I'm saying, Ray.
Thank you for that, Lavanya. I think lot of informed decisions are to be taken when we look at strategizing, looking at operational dependencies. What is the dependency when you look at operational revenue models is what you spoke. Also, we spoke about exposure, right? Regulatory exposure. If there is an issue with the compliance, I think then we have a challenge. And that gives us the architects to take executive decisions because they are not talking about technology, they are talking about set of best practices, architectures, and proven models is what I think is coming out in your pointers. What distinguishes an architect who designs secure system from one who shapes a resilient business?
Okay. So, shapes a resilient business. Mm, yeah, I think the difference comes down to perspective. A cybersecurity architect who designs secure system focuses on building strong technical solution. They ask questions like, is the system secure? Have we implemented the right controls? Does it meet security standards and compliance requirements? Those are all important questions and they are foundation of good architecture. But um, an architecture who shapes a resilient business goes one step further. They ask, how does this support the organization business goals? So, what happens if the system is failing? Can the business continue operating during a cyber attack? And if the cyber attack happens also, how quickly can we recover? Are we enabling innovation while managing risk? So these are the questions. In other words, they are not just protecting technology, they are protecting the organization's ability to deliver value to its own customers. So, from my experience in identity and access management, I have learned that resilience isn't about preventing every incident. So, no organization can eliminate all cyber risk. Instead, resilience is about designing systems that can withstand attacks, respond effectively. If something happen also, it should recover quickly as soon as possible and continue supporting the business. So a resilient architecture also understand that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility. They work closely with business leaders, developers, and operational teams, compliance teams, and executives to ensure security is built into decision making from the beginning. Decision making from the beginning rather than added at the end, at the last. So, to me, the future cybersecurity architect isn't measured by how many security tools they have deployed or how detailed their architecture diagrams are. So they are measured by whether the business can continue operating securely all the time, maintain their own customer trust, adapt to change like how AI is evolving, and recover with confidence when challenges or any attacks arise. So that's the shift we are seeing today from designing secure systems to enabling a resilient businesses frame.
I think the major point that we should list this, we are shifting from control oriented architecture to business aligned cyber security strategy. Now what you said, I will recap as a saying, is the engineering mindset should begin with what the product should be deployed. So what are the products, right? What
Yeah.
standards should be followed? based on the industry again. So if you are in the BFSI industry, you will have to look at the RBI guidelines of India at least, right? So when you're looking at the banking sector at the international level, you will have to look at those regulatories. What codes, identities, or workloads must be protected, right? So those are the things that you should look. From a strategic level, if you really look at what business capability must remain available, what value organizations trying to create, what risks could stop material damages that value. So these are the pointers which a strategic architect, cybersecurity architect begins at an earlier stage, right? Now
Yes.
coming to what is that we distinguish: technical correctness, business relevance, operational viability, risk reduction, and strategy flexibility. I think an architecture can be technically impressive but fail if it is too expensive, right? So the business has to look at how it is to taken also. Difficult to operate, poor adoption, incompatible with business growth, or unable to recover during disruptions. These are the things where an architect should be looking from an operation level to a strategic level, right? I think that's the point. When you look at the latest trend that we see is NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 added govern as a core function and positioning the cybersecurity as an enterprise risk management responsible rather than purely technical activity. That's the point that they emphasize. The framework is also designed to help organizations prioritize, communicate cybersecurity outcomes according to the business context, risk, and organization needs. Now, what we are also saying is a secure architecture that does not understand the business may protect the system while constraining the organizations, is what we want to say with those pointers that I have taken as a point. Now, how should cybersecurity architects translate business strategy into architectural decisions, priorities, and defensible trade offs?
Okay. So I believe this is one of the most important responsibilities of a cybersecurity architect. So business strategy defines where the organization wants to go, and cybersecurity architecture should help it get there securely. So our role isn't just to recommend technologies. It's to ensure that every architectural decision supports the organization objectives while managing risk appropriately. So, the first step is understanding the business before discussing solutions. So, we should understand the business. I always ask questions such as what is the business you are trying to achieve? So, which services or which assets are most critical here? And what are the biggest risk to those objectives? And what level of risk is the organization willing to accept by their own? So, only after understanding these answers do I start thinking about architecture and controls. So, every architecture decision involves trade offs. Stronger security may increase cost, it may affect user experience, or sometimes it may slow delivery. But on the other hand, prioritizing speed or convenience without adequate security can expose the organizations to significant risk. There is a rarely perfect solution actually. So that's why I believe architects should present options rather than dictate their own decisions. So we should explain the business impact, the security benefits, and the operational implications, and any residual risk in language that business leaders can understand. So this allows executives to make informed decisions aligned with the organization priorities. And if you're taking an example, if a business wants to launch a new digital service quickly, okay, they wants to launch one new digital service, but quickly. The architect's role is not to say no, it's not secure enough. Instead, the conversation discussion should be here are the listed risks, Here are the controls we can implement now. Here's what can be phased in later. And here's the residual risk you will need to accept. So that approach enables the business while maintaining accountability also. And ultimately, cybersecurity architecture is about balancing protection with progress. So, cybersecurity architecture should balance protection with progress. So, the best architects don't build the most secure environment at any cost. They build the right level of security for the organization goals and the organization's risk appetite and future growth. That's how business strategy is translated into practical architecture decisions that are both uh, technically sound and strategically valuable also.
Got it, Lavanya. Now, what should an architect ask business leaders before positioning or proposing an identity, cloud network, data, or AI security architecture?
Okay, this is also a nice question. And before recommending any security solution, I think the first job of an architect is to understand the business, as I told already, and not about the technology. So, the architect is to understand the business and not the technology. So, some simple questions I would ask are what is the business you are trying to achieve? So, which systems or data are most important to you first? And what are your biggest security concerns? And what level of risk are you comfortable accepting? Are there any regulatory or compliance requirements? Or sometimes are there any budget, cost, or timeline constraints? Is there? I'll be asking. So once I understand these answers, I can recommend the right architecture. So I have learned that the same security solution doesn't work for every organization because the answers also will be not same, right? It will be different to the different organizations. So the same security solution doesn't work for every organizations, obviously. And every business has different goals, different set of risk, and obviously different priorities also. So that's why I'll always say don't start with the technology. So start with the business. When you understand the business first, choosing the right security controls becomes much easier. Yeah.
I think the right questions to be asked is what you are saying in as many words, because people don't ask the right questions when you are proposing. And now we've been speaking in few of the discussions, Lavanya, where we say is what does the business need? You need to give them the value that they want to see when you're proposing an architecture. Now, what is that it is going to carry? Now, if I propose an example, I want to do an automation example. Like I want to do incident management automation at the first level. So, what is the uh, roadmap or architecture that I'll propose is with this architecture, we will be in a position to get so many tickets resolved which are common tickets or the normal tickets that are generic, which can be categorized into bucketized into priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. And if there is a KMDB for that ticket, you don't need to get into that, and it gets an answer from the AI chatbot or anything that it gives. If it is not resolved in the first level, then we get it to the level 2 or level 3 levels. So what the business is going to look at, so how much of that tickets is going to solve the effort of the engineers, that is the quantification. If we are able to give, I think we manage the architecture to be brought in as a proposed architecture to the business. Business will understand those. When you give numbers to business saying that I will save 50,000 man hours of work which the engineers are doing, I am reducing cost by $50,000. These are the things that if you give, business will understand is what I understand. Now coming to that point, how should architects balance the strength that with cost, customer experience, operational complexity, speed, and scalability?
Okay. Prem, I don't think cybersecurity is about choosing maximum security. It's about choosing the right security, what you need exactly for the business. So, it's not about choosing maximum security. If you choose right security, that is enough actually. So, every organization has to balance security with cost and customer experience, speed, and business growth. If security is too strict, or it can slow down employees and frustrate customers. So, if it is too relaxed, also it increases risk. So, as architects, our role is to find the right balance. For example, if we implementing a new security control that delays critical product launch by several months, we should ask whether there is another approach that reduces the risk while still allowing the business to move forward. It shouldn't stop the business. And I also believe in having open conversations with business leaders. We should explain the benefits and the trade offs and any remaining risk in simple business terms. That way, they can make informed decisions based on the organization's priorities. So, at the end of the day, the best architecture isn't the one with the most security controls, it's the one that protects the business while helping it grow, and it should innovate and deliver a great customer experience.
I think the focus should not be saying that security will protect everything, right? And
Yes,
you are saying you also cannot protect everything that is happening in the security
exactly.
sphere, because there will be new things coming in, and when new things come in, we see how it can be defended. I think that's the point that we how can architects communicate residual risk when no design can eliminate every threat or dependence.
Okay. Can you repeat? What is the question? How can?
How can architects communicate residual risk with no design, which when no design can eliminate every threat or dependence?
So you're asking how can architect communicate residual risk? Okay.
Right. Yes.
So I think one of the most important responsibilities of a cyber security architect is to be honest about residual risk first of all. So no security solution can eliminate every threat. There will always be some level of risk, whether it's due to technology limitations, a business constraint, budget, or evolving cyber threats. So instead of saying the solution is completely secure, I would say the solution significantly reduces the risk. But here are the remaining risks and how we plan to manage them. It's also important to explain a residual risk in business language, not technical jargon. Business leaders wants to know what could happen. So how likely is it? And mainly they'll ask what would be the business impact. So what are our options we are having? So what level of risk are we accepting? We are capable of accepting. So when we present the information this way, leadership can make informed decisions with a clear understanding of the trade offs. Ultimately, cybersecurity is about managing risk, not eliminating it completely. So, our role as architect is to provide clear recommendation and explain the remaining risk and help the businesses make confident, informed decisions. Bring.
Great. I think what we are also saying is cybersecurity architecture fundamentally a process of making and documenting trade-off is what we are saying. And before selecting the controls and the architecture should be understandable, and the business objectives, what is the outcome the organization is pursuing. That's the first point that we should look at. Second, it's critical assets, what data, what processes, services support that outcome is looking at, or what is the outcomes that we are looking. Threat relevance, what we want to see is which threats could be materially affected those assets that are impacted. That's the point that we impact tolerance also is how much disruption, loss, exposure an organization can withstand. That's the point you said. And Also saying that we should also looking at how the risk is being addressed, the proposed architecture design, business benefit, cost and operational impact, the limitations, the residual risk, the alternatives that are considered. That's what I think is now at a implementing a high restrictive active controls may improve security but also create a customer friction, right? So that is where we are saying, and operational delay also which can happen. So that's the point that we want to emphasize. World Economic Forum's cybersecurity outlook found that 30%, 31% of respondent identified legacy infrastructure as one of the greatest cyber resilient challenges. Legacy risks are rarely solved by adding one or more control. It requires strategic decision about modernization, segmentation, investment sequencing, and risk acceptance and business continuity. Right, that's the points that we've been driving. Right now, cybersecurity strategy begins when technical certainly ends and business trade-offs begin. Right, Lavanya. Now, coming to the next point,
Yes.
why is identity becoming the strategic control plane for cloud, AI, third party access, and modern digital enterprises?
Okay. So I always believe identity has become the foundation of modern cybersecurity. A few years ago, when I started, security was mainly about protecting the network. Today, organizations are using cloud services, SaaS application, artificial intelligence agents, remote work, APIs, third-party partners, and etc. So many things. So the traditional network boundary has almost disappeared. In this new environment, identity has become the new security perimeter. So every access request chart with an identity, whether it's an employee or whether it's a customer or contractor or service account, an API or now even an agent. So before granting access, we need to answer three simple questions. So who is requesting the access? And who is requesting the access? That's the first thing. And next, what are they allowed to access? And should they have a access right now? So these three questions I'm just repeating. So who is requesting access, and what are they allowed to access, and should they have access right now? So these three questions we have to ask, and that's why identity is no longer just an IAM function. It's a strategic control plane that helps organization protect their most valuable assets while enabling business. So, from my experience in identity and access management, I have seen organizations invest heavily in firewalls and security tools. But if identities are not properly managed, attackers don't have to break into the network. They simply log in using compromised credentials or excessive privileges. That's enough for them. So, as we move further into cloud computing and artificial intelligence, identity will become even more important because we are not just managing people anymore. Nowadays, we are having, as I told, a service account or API or a agent itself. So we are managing machine identities, workloads, autonomous agents that can make decisions and perform actions. So that's why I believe the future of cybersecurity starts with strong identity governance. So if we can manage identities well, we build a stronger foundation for everything else.
No, I think, see, those days, I come from the old school where I think we had
From
physical access, right? Where
yes.
when we started, or when I started my career, I started as a system admin. I used to create users and put them into groups in Novel Network. I think then we came into uh, Red Hat Linux. I worked on Red Hat Linux
Mhm.
for quite some time. Then on Solaris. For us, it was users where this user falls in, whether he's a backup admin, he's a server admin, network admin. Those were the groups that were there, and we used to create users and allocate that lies those things, and they used to work and have access to that. After that, we came into the AD structure where you had again
Correct.
users and groups, where you had one group again on NT4, where then 2000, 2009, and the latest 2026. So everything, if you look at, it's been the user centric. Now how IAM is coming is, today we have spread of users globally. Earlier we had users only to that organization or in one location. That server was connected only to that office. It was not connected over the internet. Now you are spreading across the globe. You need to look at IAM at different perspectives, right? What is the compliance a US organization would need? What is the compliance a European organization would need? What is the compliance a Indian organization would need at the moment we are talking about DPDPA? So if you look at, everything has to be taken care when you talk about IAM. Gone are those days I created a user and we ran around. So I gave access, he's done. So it's not like that today. The user has to be put on which region, what kind of servers he's going to access, what is the policies that he's going to look at, what kind of privileges can be looked at, how is the privileges getting access to, can he delete something, can he take backups, can he do some work. So everything is IAM dependent today. And as you rightly said, workloads, APIs, machines, non-human identities, all these are becoming a part of the infrastructure, and it has become very complex to manage, right? So IAM architecture is the core of any system today, right? Now, why do organizations continue to struggle with excessive privilege, fragmented identity storages, and weak lifecycle governance despite investing heavily on IAM tools?
Okay. So I believe the biggest challenge is not about only IM technology. So it's the processes and governance around it. So many organizations invest in excellent IAM tools, but a tool alone can't solve a business problem anymore. So, for example, if access requests aren't reviewed regularly, employees change roles without updating their access, or managers don't take ownerships of approvals, and users gradually accumulate more access, more access, more access year by year, and they can access everything. They'll be having access to everything than they actually need. That's how excessive privilege happens. So we always want to do the access review first. So the same is true for fragmented identity stores also. So different applications may have different user databases, and if they are not integrated, it becomes difficult to maintain a single trusted view of identities. So, lifecycle governance is another common challenge. If the join and move or lever processes isn't well managed, users may keep unnecessary access long after their role has changed, or they even after they have left the organizations. Also, sometimes they have, even if they are having access for 10 minutes, they left the organizations. Also, it will be the risk obviously to the organization. So, successful IAM isn't just about implementing a tool. So, it requires a clear ownership, well defined processes, regular access reviews, especially regular access reviews, and continuous governance. That's when organizations truly see the value of their IAM investment.
I think I'll take an example here. This is a recent audit that I did for one of the
Oh,
MSMEs, and
okay.
I did the user access reviews, and I found, as you rightly said, when I did the audit, there were users who had left the organization about 3 months back. Their IDs have been blocked, but they are active still. In sense,
Yes.
some of the IDs are tied up to some of the non-human identities. And
Okay.
when you look at, the person is there or not, the person is not there in the system. But
Mm.
his accounts are used for the non-human identities to do some work, which is in the
Yes.
automation, like service accounts that they
Service
have created.
accounts. Yes.
Yeah. So when I asked, how did you disable this? Don't you feel this? No, we did not disable. We changed the password and we kept it because those are linked to these
I'm own
non-human
identity.
identities, and
Yeah.
accounts are still working. So, what is your plan? Can we delegate that to another person? So they said we have not thought about it, but we don't want to disturb the system that is running. So when we do such audits, we come to know how many users accounts are active like that, having these kind of risks that we can see. What should the architects prioritize to make identity security measurable, usable, resilient rather than merely compliance? Right?
Okay.
What is your take
Yeah.
on
Yeah. So I think architects should focus on building an IAM program that is secure and simple and sustainable, not just complaint. So first they should implement least privilege from my perspective. So users have only the right access they need to do their jobs.
it?
Second, they should ensure strong authentication, especially for privileged accounts and critical applications. And third, they should ensure access reviews and lifecycle management part of everyday operations, not just something done during an audit. So finally, identity security should be measured. For example, how quickly can we remove access when someone leaves?
Yeah.
So how many privileged accounts do we have? So how to protect those privileged accounts? Are access reviews completed on time? And how many inactive accounts still exist? How many orphan accounts are there? So these are practical metrics that show whether the IAM program is actually working. At the end of the day, compliance is important, but it should be the outcome, not the goal. So the real goal is to build an identity ecosystem that protects the organization while making access simple and secure and also resilient.
Great pointers. I think that's the we should be seeing IAM how effective it is getting implemented. How are things measured? That's what we are talking about. When you see compared to the last audit, what is the improvement that we have done to the current audit? What is the challenges that we have done? Now, you can also say it is identity is no longer limited to only employees login access provision, right? So it takes modern identities an estate which includes workforce identities, customer identities, privileged administrator, contractors, partners, service accounts, as you rightly said, APIs, now devices, right? And HNIs, right? Again, non NHIs, sorry, where non-human identities are becoming again. If you look at the workload side, containers, workloads, machine identities, AI agents, these are all very important points. Now a strategic AI architecture must address the few things that I think is very important is who or what requires access. You spoke about that, right? And when somebody is elevated, do you need those accesses still be kept? That audit has to be done is what I understand, right? And what business purpose justifies this access? Is somebody elevated to the next level? Is there a business justification to have that access kept? Can it be revoked? Right? Those are things that we need. What is the minimum privilege required for a person who's at the higher level? Right? So those are things that I think very important for the IAM architects to look at. That we should also look at why IAM programs fail when treated only as an implemented projects. When you implement, then we don't take care of it. So if that way, if you do, I think it will fail. Now, coming to that point, we also want to say that in Microsoft in 2025 Digital Defense Report found that identity based attacks increased 32% during the first half year of 2025, which was more than 97% of identity attacks were password attacks, right?
Yeah.
The finding reinforced that identity architecture must be treated as a continuous monitoring security layer rather than one-time authenticated deployment. That's the point that they emphasize, that CISA's infrastructure hardening guidance recommended that phishing resistant multi-factor authentication is one thing that is very important. Centralized identity management, least privilege, role-based access control, restricted administration access, and continuous account review are very important when you talk about IAM. That's the important point that we should look at. What also is that in the modern enterprise, attackers may not break through architecture. They may break through into authenticate and just get into it. So that's the pointers that we wanted to emphasize talking on today. And with this, as we are on top of the hour, I would like to see what are the takeaways that we have done over the last 40 minutes that we've done in this podcast. I'll just read out those things as a takeaways that I have from my side. Give me a second.
Yes, sure.
What I feel is we should look at cyber security as a business decision or a business discipline. That's the first thing that we should look at. Architecture now shapes product velocity, customer trust, resilience, exposure, and strategic growth. That's the first point that I want to say. The second point, that is tool first architecture can create cost, complexity, fragmented control without reducing organization most material risks. And what should be the should be differently done is define the business outcome, critical dependency, threat, risk tolerance, and evidence required before choosing a technology, which you spoke about. Because we cannot have a technology define how the control is. The control should define what technology should be implemented, is what we spoke about. Then we spoke about human machine workloads. AI identities must be governed through purpose bound access, least privilege, continuous monitoring, and rapid revocation. That's the pointers that I have in mind. uh, with this, we are on top of the hour, Lavanya. Any final pointers that you would like to give before we conclude the session?
Yes, Prem. So I think organizations should measure architecture by business outcomes, not just by the number of security tools deployed or compliance checklist completed. Some simple questions to ask are: have we reduced cyber risk? So, can we detect and respond to incident faster? Can the business recover quickly if the attack is happening? So, are users getting the right access at the right time? Are we supporting the business without creating unnecessary complexity? If the answer to this question is yes, then the architecture is delivering its real value. Compliance is important, but it should be the result of good security, not the only measure of success. So, at the end of the day, a successful cybersecurity architecture is one that protects the organization, supports business growth, and builds customer trust. That's all.
Lavanya, thank you for bringing together identity expertise, cybersecurity practice, AI education, and your ability to make complex subjects understandable for professionals. Today's conversation makes one central unmistakable is the next cybersecurity architecture cannot remain only the person who designs the controls. The architecture should become the person who connects risk, technology, business priorities, and future growth. The shift is not from engineering to strategy because engineering has become less important. The shift is necessary because technical decisions now create consequences across customer trust, operational continuity, regulatory exposure, product velocity, and enterprise value. For those who are watching this, reflect on this. Is your cybersecurity architecture helping leadership make better decisions, or it's only producing technical correct designs? Thank you for joining us, Lavanya. Thank you, audience, for joining us. With this, we would like to conclude our episode for today and looking forward to see you in tomorrow's episode at 6:30 p.m. evening. Do follow us and support us in this initiative. Thank you, Lavanya. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Prem, and thank you, everyone.